Somewhere there has to exist a process by which a group of the people can be designated as the receivers and or the conservators of a bankrupted public agency. It's not appropriate to allow for private corporate interest that have been disabusing the law, engaging in acts of fraud and money laundering, paying kickbacks to politicians who have been rigging elections and targeting and visiting reprisal against political opposition, as well as other crimes associated with what's happened in the last few years, to be able to get a contract to be the holder of assets pending a analysis of redistribution, especially when those assets were illegally acquired and or acquired through extortion and or intentional denial of due process. This is what's happened in the last 3 years. If nothing else, I personally have a substantial public record of what has happened, as well as the denial of any legal recourse for addressing it, while there have been other very criminal activities that have happened in a consistent pattern, identifying specific entities and individuals that have sought to be able to avail themselves of the benefits of this process. So, at some point, somebody had to have come up for a plan, with a plan for how a public constitutional entity can provide the role of receivership. A. But B, there's also the situation we have where civilians, without acknowledging it, have been acting as if they have some form of military cover or some form of military authority to pretend at situations where they disabuse their civilian roles in order to leverage the cover or the access they think they have to some sort of military operation or functionality. This is part of what I have observed where I believe that certain veterans, unfortunately, a larger number of veterans than anybody cares to admit, have been bribed or enticed into engaging in illicit activity with an understanding that at some point there would be a call up or a mobilization, and then they would be able to engage their military tactical skills in service of some sort of ultra governmental or ultra nationalist agenda. And this has been a concern that I've been attempting to report for several years. And at least in the state of Texas, I believe that the Texas military code has been disabused at various points in time in order to disabuse this process of responsibility for the military in order to set up a very and continue promulgating a very substantial kickback pipeline that is aimed at offering rewards after many seditious and unconstitutional processes are allowed to unfold. So at some point, I understood that it was necessary to have some legal support. It's also my understanding that September 1st of 2019, a specific designation of the Adjutant General for the state of Texas was decommissioned. Now the available information has subsumed the specific role of the Adjutant General under the Texas military specifically. But I am concerned that, especially with the schedule that the state of Texas and the Texas legislature and the Texas government takes, that they've grandfathered in a great deal of illicit activity they set up under the auspices of manipulating the office of Adjutant General, as well as the responsibilities that the Texas Attorney General had and that the governor of Texas had in relationship to the Texas military, and that is part of what's going on now. When I said that I believe the Army Futures Command is a terrorist organization, it is because my understanding is that the three offices of the Army Futures Command located in Texas, including the headquarters of the Army Futures Command, were engaging in illicit financial processes in order to create futures that could be activated in order to promulgate domestic unrest. And I believe that that is exactly what I've seen in the last several months since the shooting of Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. And this is part of what I have been attempting to report. Regardless of what the utility or the viability of their international success was determined to be, we're talking about an actual branch or an actual organization under the United States military engaging in clandestine and illicit recruitment processes in municipalities around the United States and sabotaging legal constitutional redress for civilians in order to entice or extort them through proxy scenarios or some other manipulation into agreeing to or conceding to agreement to illicit activity domestically. If they thought they were going to leverage domestic unrest in order to support some sort of operation internationally, then again, we've approached a point where we have actually exercised no responsible leadership when it comes to command authority. And as a civilian that is supposed to be in charge, what is the legislature doing? The federal legislature? And what is the federal legislature doing in order to provide a check against state legislatures abusing their own situation in order to intentionally defraud and defund the federal government with an understanding that they're going to create this situation necessitating a call for consideration of withdrawing from the federal system in order to preserve the local and the state viability. In the beginning of 2018, I contacted the Texas Supreme Court after I'd already contacted members of the state legislature as well as federal legislators from the state of Texas that had previously been in executive and judicial and legislative roles in Texas. And I said, if we are going to be sincere, then we need to have a referendum and we need to have a discussion on secession. We need to have a constitutional process in the state of Texas where we boycott the 2018 election and we have a referendum within the state of Texas to determine whether, under the circumstances, we believe we need to secede from the federal government because the crimes of the federal government are that significant. Without that, then this appears to be a violent junta that, under the laws of the state of Texas, literally qualifies as communism. This is on the public record. And what has happened is instead, somebody allowed those to be used as futures agreements to manipulate policy in other countries. It's time to bring that back and to bring that home. I'm looking for anybody that has an understanding of an appropriate constitutional public process by which a group of people can either be appointed, elected, or step up and volunteer into creating a group of citizens and residents that can take responsibility for receivership of public agencies on a state level and or a local municipal county level that have gone bankrupt. And part of the bankruptcy is determined by their refusal to hold themselves to necessary compliance standards in order to be able to qualify for their surety, which is by and large funded by the public. And as a result, it is now necessary to put them into a process of receivership in order to reconstitute them.